Good morning and welcome to Kramer's Corner with a daily technical update. It is Tuesday, the 5th of November. It is election day in US. Maybe that's why the US market has been fairly quiet yesterday session. But we'll start this morning with Novo Nordisk, Danish pharmaceutical company making Ozempic weight loss medicine, and I talked about it several times for quite some time. It has formed on the weekly chart this shoulder-like pattern here with the falling neckline, broken barriers out, testing 742 supports, and it seems like it could do it again. Here we are on a daily chart, bearish sentiment in a downtrend, so we could move lower. We actually dipped below it here last week, and we could dip down to around 700, getting into this consolidation area here. For Novo Nordisk to reverse this trend, well, it actually needs to get back above 831.30. And for my American viewers, I know I have quite a few. Here is the Novo Nordisk ADR traded on the US stock exchange, on the New York Stock Exchange. 105.69, just above that support there. Of course, there's the exchange rate that is affecting the prices a little bit. But still, we have this consolidation area here around $105, $106, and we could dip down to around the 100 moving average, around 103 before bouncing. And I think later this week they should come up with some numbers on their obesity drugs. So let's see about that. Moving on to the US market, and S&P 500 has formed this rising wedge-like pattern here, broken barriers out of the lower rising trend line. Key support 5,674. Close below that level, well, we can be looking at 55.88 and maybe even 5,500. And if it really is bad, well, then we're looking at 5,400. Here on the weekly medium term, you can see we are in this rising trend line, rising channel like pattern here. Massive divergence on the RSI, so it doesn't look too good. I mean, the uptrend seems quite stretched. If the RSI is also closing below 40 threshold on the daily, well, then it will further confirm at least a correction lower. We also have more or less the same picture here, Nasdaq 100 forming this rising wedge-like pattern. It's not the most perfect one, but still, it's there. We are below the lower rising trend line, key support at 19,622. If it takes out that, well, then we are looking at levels around 19,000. On the Dow Jones, the Dow Jones was a little bit lower yesterday. Key support 41,563. 41,800 was taken out, but that's a minor support. The key one is down here, and that will, if it breaks below and close below that key support, then the 40 RSI is likely to be broken, and then we are in a bearish sentiment that could take a lower. We can also see how this is forming a very stretched uptrend indeed. And the same picture here on the weekly chart, really, where we have massive divergence on the RSI, so it doesn't look too good at the moment. Moving on to the Euro Stoxx 50, still holding on above 4,800. That is key support, and the next key support will be 47.32. However, we are in a negative sentiment on the RSI. You can see the RSI here is below the 40 threshold. So I think we will see selling pressure resuming, pushing lower here. We are a little bit higher, 0.3% in pre-trading or pre-market. Let's see that. But it really needs to get above, back above 5,000 for any meaningful uptrend. The DAX 40 also has broken its rising trend line here in this rising channel. 19,000 around this key support there. If it closes below, we are in the cloud. We are also likely to break the 40 threshold. There's been divergence for quite some time, so there's risk lower. Definitely a close below 19,000. We are likely to see lower levels towards 18,774 or 18,600 or 18,590 level. So it looks quite heavy at the moment. If it can get back above 19,330, well, maybe it could try to establish an uptrend, but it doesn't look too strong, to be honest. The Amsterdam index, key support 873, a close below, well, then we are looking at 858 and possibly lower. The CAC 40, 73.41, but key support at 7,300. We are in a negative sentiment on the RSI, indicating that we are likely to move lower. We're also below the cloud. All the moving averages we're below there, and they are all declining, so they will most likely push the index lower. Looking at the weekly chart, well, we are in a downtrend confirmed on CAC 40. On the Swiss market also fairly heavy. After bouncing from the 11,750, we could revisit it. If we move back below 200, it's likely to move that direction. We are also in negative sentiment on the RSI. We are below the cloud. We are below all moving averages, which are declining. So also looking quite heavy for the Swiss market. Euro dollar dancing around this 108.73 and the 200 moving average just below 109. There is potential up to the 38.2 retracement here at 109.35 and the resistance at 109.50 just above it, which it should be able to move up there. However, if it moves back below this spike down here, or this bearish candle at 108.30, downtrend is likely to resume and likely also to take out the lows here from a couple of weeks ago and push lower towards 107, 106.65. The euro sterling also fairly quiet the past few days, past couple of days. After this spike up and then collapse to around 50% of the bullish move. We are in a positive sentiment, so I think we will see it picking up. However, we can see the 55 moving average still trying to drag it lower, and if it slides back below 83.50, then I think that downtrend will resume. And we can also see on the weekly chart that the medium-term euro sterling is still in a bearish trend. The cable sterling dollar, well, bouncing from the, still trying to bounce further, staying above the rising trend line here. Let's zoom in so we can better see what's actually going on. So it's a little bit indecisive at the moment, but you can draw some trend lines and you can do that yourself. You see there's some trend lines here, but they are not really that clear what's going on. So they are not really narrowing, they're actually expanding, as you can see, expanding like a parabol here. So what I will do instead, I'll say, okay, if it can move above the that peak there at 130.45 and back into the cloud, well, then 131 will come, could be tested. However, then we have the 55 moving average slightly declining, kind of giving it a pressure. And it's little bit decisive at the undecided at the moment, sorry. Can't really make up his mind what it's going to do. However, we are in a bearish trend, but there's also divergence. And if we draw a trend line here, you can see how that divergence is. You can see that the RSI is rising, so it seems like a bearish trend exhaustion mode. But moving back below the rising trend line here, it could resume downtrend. So I'm a little bit unsure what's going on in cable at the moment. Dollar yen also fairly quiet, a dip below 151.85 support to the 200 moving average, but closed back above. So it seems like it's being caught range bound. What I will actually say, I will add this one because you had that little dip down there and you had a dip down here yesterday. So let's see, 151.45. If it takes out that, expect a sell-off down to 149.40. If it takes out 154 to the upside, well, expect a move higher towards 155 and a quarter, 155.50. Euro yen also a little bit taking a break at the moment, moving sideways, but we are in a bullish trend. We are in a positive sentiment. It should move higher here towards 167.5, 168. If it takes out 164 and close below, then expect a dip down to around 162, 161. Also yen, also sideways, and it's still caught in this range here between 99 and 101.75, and they're not doing much, but it's getting more and more narrow, so it can't really make its mind up. But the RSI is still in a positive sentiment, and it seems like it should push towards the previous peaks here at 101.75 again. Sterling yen a bit more volatile after this correction down here to the support and the 38.2 retracement at 196. Bounced off it. Still positive sentiment on the RSI. No divergence indicating that we could see a push higher above the 200 towards 202.15, maybe even higher. But if it takes out the lows here from a couple of days ago at 195.35, well, then we could see a push down to 193.50 level. Aussie dollar seems to be bouncing, and what I will do, I'll remove this one because it seems like kind of pivot, but it wasn't that strong, and we knew that. But a bounce here that could take it up to at least the 66.40 and the lower part of the cloud area, where there's some resistance. We also have 21 coming down. However, there could be a bounce all the way up to the 38.2 at 66.90. For it to break bullish again, I would like to see it above 67.25. But here we have the 55 moving average coming down, kind of putting a lid on it. So I think we will end up here around to just around 67. The RSI, a minor divergence on the RSI, but we are still in a negative sentiment. If it starts sliding lower and taking out 65.35, well, then we're looking at 64.70, 64.50. Dollar Canada in a correction mode after a massive, very strong run. In a correction mode, reached the 38.2 retracement already. I think we will dip down to the 61.8 at 138.28, maybe even lower, and that is of the last leg up here, but the 38.2 of the entire leg up, or entire move up here, is all the way down here at 137.5 level. So if it starts taking out that, one could also come under pressure. But I'm not quite sure it will do that. But we should see a larger correction. We can also see the market is, or the price is fairly far away from all moving averages. They are all rising, and we have the 55 crossing over 200. So there will be some underlying support. Also, there's no divergence on the RSI, which is still in a positive sentiment, indicating we are likely to see higher highs after a correction. Sterling Canada, not much to report really. Still, this range bound between 181.45 and 178.30. Very big range, but it's also a very volatile cross. Euro Swiss spiked above the upper falling trend line, but closed well back again. The RSI is still didn't break above the 60 threshold, which is required because we can see we are still in a negative sentiment. Never crossed above the 60 threshold. It needs to close above for further upside potential towards 95. So if it takes out the spike up from yesterday there at 94.50, well, then we could see that push up to 95. But for now, it seems to still remaining in this slightly falling trend. Dollar Swiss dipped below minor support at 86.33. The reason why it's minor is just those two here giving that support not really much support else. I think we will see a correction down a bit further towards 86, maybe even lower. But we are in a bullish trend. There is slightly divergence, so let's see. We can remove this one, that is obsolete. But we are in this quite volatile phase here, and I think we could see some heavy swings. But we have the 55 moving average slightly coming up here. That will give it some support. So even if it breaks to this level, I think we'll see then a turnaround. And finally, the dollar index. The dollar index is below the 103.80, but it's struggling for its life, so to speak. But I think we will see a correction below the 200 moving average. We have dipped below a couple of times. If it takes out the lows from yesterday at 103.50, expect a push down towards 103, maybe even 102.74. If it takes out 104 and this 104.27 here, well, then we could see a push towards 104.85. Gold, very close to the 38.2 retracement at 21.18. If it breaks below the 27.08, expect a push down to 26.74 with this 61.8 retracement, maybe even lower. There is divergence on the RSI, indicating an exhaustion of the trend, but for now it remains bullish until it breaks below 27.08. Sorry. Silver again testing this 32.25 support. If it breaks below, well, then we're looking at 31. If it bounces, which it should, because there's no divergence on the RSI, still showing positive sentiment, it should bounce and push higher. But this support level is really key. It can dip below, but let's see what will play out. On the platinum, well, it's dancing around the 61.8 here at 987. It closed below yesterday, so there's still risk to dip lower, but the 55 moving average and the 100 is giving some support. If it starts moving above 1,000 again, expect the uptrend to resume. Palladium, that dipped down to more or less spot on the 786 retracement at 1,055 and bouncing. And if it moves back above 1,100, then I think a bullish trend will resume. What has now resumed bullish trend, or starting to establish it at least, is copper. It has this morning spiked above the 45.70 resistance level, a close above, and a close above the 60 threshold here on the RSI. Expect a push towards 460, 470. Crude oil crawled a little bit higher towards 72.34. Yesterday, we are not quite there yet after bouncing off this falling trend line there. We are still a little bit undecided on the RSI. If it moves back above 60 threshold, and if we get the WTI above 72.34, well, then we could see a push up to 75, maybe even higher. Otherwise, being rejected, it will resume downtrend. And Brent crude oil, more or less the same picture really there. It is 76.54 that is required to be taken out. Just very quickly on the US Nat GAS, we can see here, well, it's still this triangle-like pattern it needs to break out of. US 10-year Treasury yields, well, it has been on the rise for quite some time. Now it seems to be pausing a bit, and we could see a correction. If it takes out 419 here, 420, 419, we have some support here at 416. This is not a strong support. If it takes out the peak here from yesterday at 438 and a change, well, then there is potential up to around 445, 450, and we could see it spike up to that. Maybe some wild swings here the next 24 hours as election results are starting to tick in. The 2-year Treasury yields key support here at 406, which is bounced off yesterday. We're still in a bullish trend. There's no divergence. However, we had this bearish engulfing like pattern there. If it takes out the lows there from yesterday at 404, well, then we could see a correction lower towards 390. And finally, the EuroBund future. Well, EuroBund future is trading around this 131.60 level here with quite some volatility. We are in a bearish trend, could push lower. And if we're looking at the weekly chart, we can see what's going on here. We are in a bearish trend. And if the weekly RSI moves back below and close back below 40 threshold, then there is further downside potential. And it is actually a double top-like pattern that is unfolding. All right, that's all for today. Have a nice day and talk to you again tomorrow.